The Palace of Valdora was built from silver stone and glowing crystals. Its towers reached the clouds, and its walls stretched wider than forests. Inside, thousands of alien courtiers moved with purpose, their faces sharp, their eyes glowing faintly. Among them, one figure stood above all others, their queen. Queen Seraphina was feared across 10 star systems. She was tall, her armor polished like black steel, her crown shaped from living crystal that shimmered whenever she moved. She had led her armies in countless battles and brought victory every time. Her people whispered that no one, not even the strongest warrior of another world, could stand against her. But even a queen was bound by tradition. The High Council of Valdora had gathered inside the throne hall. Old voices echoed between the marble pillars as the counselors spoke. "It is time, my queen," one of the elders said, bowing. "You have ruled alone long enough. The law demands a union, to balance strength with loyalty. The crown cannot rest on one head forever without risk." Seraphina narrowed her eyes. "None among our warriors have proven worthy. They seek my throne, not my heart." Another elder raised his voice. "Then let the ancient law of chance be followed. Let the stars decide your mate." The queen clenched her jaw. She hated the law, but she could not deny it. For thousands of years, the Valdoran throne had followed this custom. When a ruler refused all suitors, the stars would decide. A name would be chosen at random from the citizens of the empire. The chosen one, whether noble or peasant, alien or off-worlder, would become the ruler's partner. The ritual was old, unbreakable, and so the council gathered the scrolls, and the ritual began. The great crystal orb in the hall glowed as thousands of names were chanted by the priests. One by one, names vanished until only a single one remained. When the final name was spoken, silence filled the hall. The queen's eyes hardened. "Repeat it," the priest bowed nervously. "The stars have chosen a human." The hall erupted in murmurs. "A human? Impossible. Fragile creatures, weak and small. How can one of them stand beside our queen?" The queen stood, her voice cutting through the noise. "Bring him." The human's name was Daniel. He had not expected his quiet life to end this way. He was a mechanic, working in the docks where ships from dozens of worlds came and went. He was ordinary, unnoticed. Just another worker fixing engines and patching old hulls. When the guards arrived at his workshop, he thought it was a mistake. "You're coming with us," one said firmly. Daniel laughed nervously. "I think you have the wrong man. I'm just a mechanic. I fix broken ships." The guard handed him a scroll sealed with the queen's crest. The stars chose. "You are bound by law." His hands trembled as he read. The words were simple, but their weight crushed him. He was to be married to the queen herself. Daniel was taken to the palace, bathed and dressed in fine clothes of woven silver threads. He felt like he was walking inside a dream, every step heavier than the last. The day of the wedding came quickly. The entire empire watched as the ceremony began. The palace courtyard was filled with nobles, warriors, and alien leaders from neighboring systems. Great banners flew high, showing the crest of Valdora. Daniel stood at the altar, his hands hidden behind his back, trying to control his shaking. He had never been in front of so many eyes before. Then the queen appeared. Seraphina walked down the steps, her crown glowing faintly, her black and silver robes trailing behind her. She looked at him, her gaze sharp as a blade. She saw not a warrior, not a noble, but a human who looked ordinary and weak, her people whispered. "Is this the one? He will never last a day. Our queen deserves a champion, not this frail man." Daniel heard them, every word, but he stood still. His heart raced, but he would not collapse. The priest raised his staff, and the ritual began. Words of unity and strength echoed through the air. The vows were spoken, the ancient law fulfilled. The queen placed her hand upon Daniel's, her touch cold, her eyes unreadable. And just like that, the ceremony ended. The empire now had a queen and a human king consort. That night, the palace was filled with feasting and celebration. But beneath the music and laughter, Daniel felt the tension. Aliens stared at him with suspicion and mockery. Some avoided him, others openly laughed. He ate quietly, his mind racing. He knew he was out of place. He was not a warrior, not a noble. He was just a man caught in a tradition he barely understood. The queen sat beside him, speaking little. She glanced at him only once, her expression calm but cold. "You are silent," she finally said. "I don't know what to say," Daniel admitted. "This world is not mine. These people are not mine. And yet I stand here." Her lips curved in the faintest hint of a smirk. "At least you are honest." Most men here drown themselves in pride. Pride won't help me, Daniel said softly. I'll just do my best to stand. For the first time, her gaze lingered on him. He was not strong like her warriors, nor did he shine with alien power, but he had something else, a steadiness that did not break even under countless eyes. She looked away quickly, unwilling to admit even to herself that this human intrigued her. When the feast ended, Daniel was led to his new chambers within the palace. The room was larger than any home he had ever known, with walls of crystal and windows that opened to the endless stars. He sat alone by the balcony, staring at the alien skies. His thoughts spun wildly. What am I doing here? He whispered to himself. How long before they throw me out? How long before she does? Yet deep inside, another voice stirred. A quiet strength, one he had carried all his life, though few had ever seen it. He had been chosen. He did not know why, but he would not fall. Not yet. And so the first night of the union ended. The queen thought of him as weak, a mere human forced into a role he could never handle. The court mocked him, the people doubted him, but Daniel had secrets of his own. He had faced hardship before. He had endured storms, hunger, and battles that had nearly ended his life back on Earth. He was no stranger to pain. The queen did not know it yet, but the man she married was far from ordinary. The stars had chosen for a reason, and soon the queen would see the truth. The palace of Valdora woke early, long before the sun's light touched the sky. The guards marched through the silver corridors, servants carried trays of strange fruits, and the sound of bells marked the start of another royal day. For Daniel, it was the beginning of a new life. He had spent only a few days in the palace, yet it already felt like a world completely different from the one he had known. On Earth, his days were filled with engines, grease, and the sound of humming ships. Here, he was surrounded by crystal walls, alien voices, and endless traditions he did not understand. The queen watched him closely. Serafina was not a woman who trusted easily. She ruled with sharp eyes, always measuring those around her. To her, Daniel was still a mystery. He was not loud, not proud, not eager to show off his strength like her people often did. Instead, he moved quietly, speaking only when needed. That puzzled her. The court, however, was far less patient. Everywhere Daniel went, he could feel the stares. Some were filled with curiosity, others with mockery. When he walked through the great halls, nobles whispered behind jeweled masks. That is the human consort? He looks fragile. He cannot even wear armor. At first, Daniel tried to ignore them. He had lived his life as an outsider before. Back on Earth, he had been the quiet man in the corner, the one who worked hard while others spoke louder. But here, the pressure was greater. These were not just neighbors or co-workers. These were powerful beings, warriors who could crush him if they wished. Still, Daniel walked on, his head held steady. He refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing him bend. The queen soon began testing him. One morning, she summoned him to the training yard. The sun glowed against the silver sand where alien warriors practiced with long spears and curved blades. You will watch today, Serafina said. Daniel nodded. He stood silently as warriors clashed, their movements fast and sharp. He studied them carefully, noting how each fighter relied on strength, speed, and flashy displays of skill. After a while, the queen turned to him. What do you see? Daniel hesitated, then spoke. They are strong, but they waste energy. They fight to impress, not to survive. Her eyes narrowed. You think you know battle better than my champions? I don't know battle like them, Daniel said calmly. But I know what it means to fight when you have no choice. Survival doesn't care about pride. For the first time, the queen had no answer. She looked at him differently, though her face remained unreadable. Life in the palace continued, but Daniel was constantly pulled into traditions. There were feasts where tables groaned under the weight of alien food, meats that shimmered, fruits that glowed faintly, and drinks that burned like fire. The queen sat tall, eating little, watching her court with careful eyes. Daniel, though uncomfortable, forced himself to try everything offered to him. His stomach twisted, but he never complained. There were ceremonies that lasted hours where he had to stand silently beside Serafina while nobles chanted old songs. His legs ached, but he stayed steady, never swaying. There were long council meetings where alien lords argued over politics, resources, and battles. Daniel understood little, Yet he listened carefully, remembering faces, tones, and small details. He began to see patterns, hints of betrayal and hidden rivalries. The court thought he was silent because he was foolish. In truth, he was watching. Still, not everyone mocked him. Some servants whispered kindly, surprised by his quiet manners. A young guard once told him, "Most nobles treat us as shadows, but you look at us when you speak. You say thank you. That is rare." Daniel smiled faintly at that. Respect cost nothing, yet earned much. He had learned long ago that kindness was a strength most people overlooked. The queen, however, grew restless. She began inviting him to join her in the evenings, not out of affection but curiosity. She wanted to understand this human, to see where his strength, if any, truly lay. One evening, they walked together along the balcony that overlooked the city. The lights of Valdora stretched far below, glowing like a sea of stars. "You do not complain," Serafina said suddenly. "Not about the food, the ceremonies, or the stairs. Why?" Daniel leaned against the railing, his eyes on the horizon. "Complaining won't change anything. I am here whether I like it or not. If I must walk through fire, I'll walk." Step by step, her brow furrowed. "Do you not feel shame? My people laugh at you." "I've been laughed at before," he replied simply. "It doesn't break me. Their voices don't decide who I am." For a long moment she said nothing. Her people measured worth in strength and victory. But this man measured worth in something else: endurance. As weeks passed, Serafina tested him in different ways. She made him sit through the war games, where warriors demonstrated their power. She gave him duties that forced him to walk long distances through the city, carrying the weight of ceremony. She placed him in feasts where food was designed to overwhelm outsiders. Every time Daniel endured. He did not shine, he did not boast, but he endured. The court grew restless. They wanted him to fail, but he never gave them that chance. Yet shadows lurked beneath the palace walls. Daniel began to notice whispers at the edge of conversations. Nobles lowered their voices when he walked near. Some left meetings too quickly, avoiding his eyes. He saw secret glances exchanged, hands tightening on goblets, maps hidden before he could see. A plot was forming. One night, while walking through the corridors, Daniel overheard two cloaked figures speaking in hushed tones. "The queen grows soft," one whispered. "This human is proof. We strike during the Festival of Stars." Daniel froze, listening carefully. The plan was not yet clear, but the danger was real. He did not confront them. He knew he would gain nothing by showing his hand too early. Instead, he returned to his chambers and thought long into the night. He had been quiet long enough. Soon he might need to act. The queen noticed something had changed. She saw him rise earlier, his eyes sharper, his movements more focused. She caught him studying the guards, the layouts of the halls, and even the patterns of the court's gatherings. One night, she confronted him. "You are hiding something." Daniel looked at her calmly. "I listen, I watch." "I see things others ignore," her gaze hardened. "And what do you see?" "That danger is coming," he said softly. "And when it comes, you'll need more than pride." She stepped closer, her presence fierce. "You speak as if you are more than what you are. Tell me, human, what strength do you claim to hold?" Daniel did not flinch. "The kind that waits until it is needed. The kind that survives." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Their eyes met, two wills unbending. The queen felt something strange inside her, an uncertainty she had not felt in years. This man, this human, might be more than she thought. The days moved toward the Festival of Stars, the grandest celebration of the empire. The court prepared for music, games, and endless displays of power. But Daniel knew it would also bring something else: betrayal. He trained quietly, in the hidden corners of the palace. Not with flashy weapons or alien blades, but with his own body, pushing himself with silent discipline, sharpening his reflexes, remembering every lesson from his old life. When the queen discovered him one night, she watched silently as he moved with precision. He was not weak. He had simply been hiding his strength all along. For the first time, her heart stirred with something she had never felt before: respect for a human, and though she did not admit it, she began to wonder. Perhaps the stars had chosen wisely after all. The Festival of Stars was approaching, and the city of Valdora was alive with preparation. Lanterns shaped like comets hung across the streets. Musicians tuned strange instruments that sang with deep echoes. Merchants filled the markets with rare silks, glowing gems, and food that shimmered faintly under the twin moons. For most of the empire, the festival was a time of joy and unity. But inside the palace, shadows were moving. Daniel felt it every day. The air carried whispers. The courtiers looked sharper, their eyes colder. He saw small signs, guards changing their posts without reason, servants carrying sealed letters, nobles holding secret meetings in hidden corners. He remembered the words he had overheard weeks earlier. "We strike during the Festival of Stars." The queen, however, did not notice. Or perhaps she chose not to. Serafina was proud, confident in her power. She believed none would dare rise against her. She had led her armies to countless victories. Betrayal was something that happened to weaker rulers. Daniel was not so sure. He had seen betrayal before, on earth, in wars and in streets. And betrayal often came from those who smiled the widest. One evening, Daniel joined Serafina in the throne hall. She sat tall on her crystal seat, listening to reports from her commanders. Nobles lined the walls, watching, whispering. When the meeting ended, Daniel approached her quietly. "You are surrounded by enemies," he said in a low voice. Her eyes narrowed. "Enemies? These are my council. They have served for years." "That is why they are dangerous," Daniel replied. "The ones closest to you know your strengths and your weaknesses." The queen's jaw tightened. "You think me blind?" "I think you are certain of yourself," Daniel said carefully. But certainty blinds even the strongest. For a moment, silence filled the hall. Her warriors would have been punished for speaking so boldly. But Daniel was not a warrior of Valdora. He was her consort, chosen by the stars. That gave him the strange freedom to speak truths others dared not. Serafina's gaze was sharp, but deep inside his words unsettled her. As the festival drew closer, Daniel began to move carefully through the palace. He walked the corridors at night, memorizing every turn, every escape path. He studied the guards, noting who looked loyal and who seemed restless. He also began to test the court. At feasts, he asked quiet questions, pretending to be foolish, pretending to be curious. Many nobles ignored him, but some grew uneasy. Their words slipped, small pieces of truth escaping like sparks from a fire. One noble sneered. "The queen grows soft with a human by her side. Her reign will not last." Daniel said nothing, only nodding as if he agreed, but inside he stored the words like weapons. Another time he saw a servant carrying a sealed message. Daniel dropped a coin on the ground, bending low to retrieve it. In that moment he glimpsed the wax seal on the letter, a mark belonging to Lord Kalen, one of the most ambitious nobles in the court. Daniel now had a name. Meanwhile, Serafina grew restless with him. One night, she found him again in the hidden training yard. He moved with discipline, striking the air with quick fists, his body strong, though not as massive as her warriors. She watched silently until he stopped, sweat glistening on his skin. "You pretend to be weak," she said. Daniel turned to her, his breath steady. "I never said I was weak." "You assumed it?" Her eyes narrowed. "Why do you hide your strength?" "Because strength shown too soon becomes a target," Daniel answered. "Better to let enemies believe I am nothing until they reveal themselves." Her heart stirred with conflict. She had judged him too quickly, yet he carried a wisdom her people did not. He did not chase glory. He prepared quietly, patiently. The Festival of Stars arrived. The palace was decorated with banners of gold and silver. Crystals glowed softly along the walls, casting the halls in warm light. Musicians filled the air with songs of old victories. Nobles dressed in shimmering robes, their jewels brighter than the stars above. The queen stood tall at the heart of it all, her crown blazing with living crystal. She was radiant, untouchable, the symbol of Valdora's strength. Beside her stood Daniel. He wore simple royal garments, less dazzling than the nobles, but clean and steady. Many laughed at his plainness, but he ignored them. His eyes scanned the hall, sharp and watchful. The night began with feasting. Exotic dishes were brought in, overflowing with colors and scents. Wine flowed like rivers. Dancers moved across the marble floor, their steps fast and graceful. But Daniel felt no joy. He felt only the weight of danger pressing closer. As the festival reached its peak, a moment of silence fell. The queen rose from her throne, lifting her hand. The crowd bowed their heads, waiting for her speech, and then it happened. The doors of the hall burst open. Armed warriors stormed inside, their blades gleaming, their eyes filled with hatred. Chaos erupted. The nobles screamed, scattering like frightened birds. Guards rushed to defend the queen, but more attackers poured in through hidden passages. The music of the festival was drowned by the clash of steel and the cries of the wounded. Seraphina drew her sword, her eyes blazing with fury. She fought fiercely, her blade cutting through enemies with swift, powerful strikes. Yet the attackers were many, and their ambush had been carefully planned. Daniel stood at her side, his heart pounding. This was the moment he had waited for. At first he stayed back, letting the guards clash with the attackers. But when he saw the queen surrounded, when he saw a blade rising toward her unguarded side, he moved. With speed that stunned even himself, Daniel lunged forward. He grabbed a fallen spear from the floor and struck the attacker down with precise force. The queen turned, her eyes wide. For the first time, she saw him not as a silent man, but as a fighter. His movements were not wild. They were sharp, controlled, born of discipline and survival. Daniel did not fight like her warriors who showed off their strength with roaring cries. He fought like a man who knew every move could mean life or death. The battle raged on. Seraphina fought with the power of a queen, her strikes sending enemies crashing to the ground. Daniel fought beside her, every motion quick and efficient. He saved her more than once, blocking a blade meant for her back, striking down an assassin who tried to slip through. The nobles who once mocked him now stared in shock. The human,
"He fights!
He is not weak at all." Where did he learn this? But Daniel ignored their voices. His focus was only on survival, on keeping the queen alive. The attackers pressed harder, shouting, "For Lord Kalen!" The name confirmed Daniel's suspicions. Kalen was behind the betrayal. Seraphina's fury blazed hotter than fire. "Kalen dares betray me?" she roared, cutting through another enemy. But even as she fought, doubt stirred in her chest. She realized something terrible. She had not seen the danger, yet her human consort had. At last, the attackers began to fall back. The guards, inspired by their queen's strength and Daniel's unexpected skill, pushed them toward the doors. When silence finally returned to the hall, the floor was littered with broken weapons and wounded enemies. The nobles trembled, whispering in disbelief. The queen lowered her sword, her breath heavy. She turned to Daniel, her eyes searching. "You knew," she said. Daniel met her gaze, calm though his chest heaved with exhaustion. "I listened. I watched. I saw it coming." Her voice softened, though she did not realize it. "And you fought." "I did what I had to," he said simply. "I swore nothing, but I will not stand by and let you fall." Her heart beat strangely in her chest. She had thought him weak, a burden forced upon her. But now in the blood-stained hall she saw the truth. The man the stars had chosen was far more than he seemed. And for the first time, Queen Seraphina was not certain of her own strength. She was certain of his. The Festival of Stars had been meant as a celebration of unity. Instead, it became a reminder of betrayal. But it also became the night when the human consort revealed his hidden power. And the queen, though stunned, could not deny the truth. She was no longer ruling alone. The Palace of Valdora had never been so quiet. The celebration halls, which had been filled with music, laughter, and glowing banners just hours before, now smelled of smoke and tension. Daniel stood in the center, surveying the aftermath of the first wave of the attack. The festival had been turned into chaos, and the queen's enemies had shown just how bold they were. Seraphina stood beside him, her black armor streaked with dust and blood. Her sword was raised, still trembling from the intensity of the fight. She had fought with all her strength, but even she had felt the pressure of so many attackers striking at once. "They are bold," she said quietly, scanning the room for any sign of the remaining threat. Daniel's eyes were sharp. "They are desperate," he said calmly. "Kalen does not attack openly unless he thinks he can win. There are more hiding, waiting for the right moment." The queen's gaze met his. For the first time, she did not see a weak human at her side. She saw a warrior, a strategist, a protector. Outside, the palace gates were under siege. Daniel moved swiftly through the corridors, coordinating guards and pointing out the weak spots in the attacker's plan. He had memorized the palace layout over the past weeks, quietly noting every exit, every secret passage, every area that could be used to ambush the queen. When he arrived at the main gate, a group of heavily armed rebels tried to force their way inside. Daniel stepped forward, a calm expression on his face. With quick, precise movements, he disarmed the first two, using their own momentum against them. The guards watched in amazement. This human, whom they had laughed at just days ago, was defeating trained warriors with skill and strategy, not brute force. Word spread quickly among the palace guards. The human consort was no ordinary man. Meanwhile, Serafina moved through the hall with the precision of a seasoned warrior. She cut down attackers who tried to reach her, her movements fluid, deadly, and almost effortless. Yet for every enemy she struck down, two more appeared. Her strength alone could not hold the palace. Daniel noticed her hesitation, the fraction of a second when her mind calculated the danger. That fraction of a second could have been fatal. Without thinking, he moved to cover her. A soldier lunged toward Serafina from the shadows, a sharp blade aimed at her back. Daniel intercepted, grabbing the arm with one hand and twisting it, sending the attacker sprawling. Serafina's eyes widened. "You?" she whispered, as realization dawned. Daniel only nodded briefly. "I will not let you fall," he said. His voice was calm, steady, unshakable. The battle intensified. From the upper floors of the palace, more attackers poured in. Daniel fought alongside the guards, but he was always conscious of Serafina's position. He anticipated danger, blocked attacks before they reached her, and used the palace's architecture to their advantage. He threw an enemy down a staircase, ducked under another swing, and moved with a speed that seemed impossible for a human. Every motion was precise, calculated, and deadly. The queen, watching him, could no longer deny the truth. He was stronger, faster, and smarter than any human she had imagined. At one point, a group of assassins cornered the queen in the grand hall. Their blades were sharp, their movements coordinated. Serafina was powerful, but even she struggled against the numbers. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his eyes cold and focused. "Step aside," he commanded, his voice carrying authority. The attackers laughed, thinking the human was weak, but within seconds Daniel moved like a shadow. He disarmed one, blocked a strike from another, and with a final, precise motion sent the last flying across the hall. The nobles who had been watching whispered in awe. The human had become the shield of the queen, his strength undeniable. Serafina's heart raced. For the first time, she realized the man she had married was not only her equal in courage, but perhaps her superior in skill. The battle raged for hours. Daniel fought relentlessly, moving from one threat to another, never showing fatigue. Every time Serafina faced danger, he was there, anticipating, blocking, striking. The attackers began to falter, their confidence shaken by the human who moved like a force of nature. Finally, the last wave of attackers began to retreat. Many lay defeated, some fled into the shadows, and the remaining guards secured the palace gates. The hall was silent, broken only by the groans of the injured and the crackling of small fires. Serafina lowered her sword and took a deep breath. She turned to Daniel, her eyes wide with shock and admiration. "You," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are incredible." Daniel wiped sweat from his brow. "I am just a man," he replied simply. "A man who knows the stakes." She stepped closer, her presence powerful and commanding. "No, you are more than a man. You are my shield, my equal, perhaps even my strength." Daniel met her gaze, calm and steady. "Then we fight together, not as queen and consort, but as partners." The queen's lips curved in the faintest smile. It was the first time she had smiled freely since the battle began. The palace guards and nobles slowly gathered around. Their whispers were no longer filled with mockery. Instead, there was awe, respect, and a newfound understanding. "The human," one guard said quietly. "He saved the queen." "He is no weakling," another whispered. "He is something else entirely." Daniel ignored their words. His focus was on the queen and the palace. The threat had not completely vanished. Lord Kalen had orchestrated this attack, and Daniel knew it was only the beginning. But he also knew that he had earned the trust of Serafina and the respect of the court. Later that evening, as the palace quieted and the fires in the hall burned low, the queen and Daniel stood on the balcony, looking out at the city. The stars above shone brighter than ever, as if acknowledging the events of the day. Serafina broke the silence. "All this time I believed humans were weak." "That you were weak." Daniel looked at her calmly. "Weakness is easy to see. Strength is quiet. The strongest survive not by showing off, but by being ready when it matters most. She turned to him, her expression softening. I misjudged you. I know, he said simply. But now you know, and I will not fail you again. For the first time, the queen felt something she had never felt before. Complete trust in another being. She who had ruled with iron had never let anyone stand so close to her heart. Yet this human, this ordinary man by appearance, had proven himself extraordinary. As the night deepened, the palace remained tense but secure. Daniel continued his watch, ensuring no lingering threats remained. He moved silently through the corridors, checking guards, observing the city, and preparing for any next attack. The queen stayed by his side, her hand occasionally brushing his. It was not a gesture of affection yet, but of recognition. She now understood that the stars had chosen wisely. The human she had married was no ordinary man. He was a warrior, a protector, a man whose true strength was only beginning to reveal itself. And Serafina knew without doubt that the days ahead would be different. The palace, the empire, and her heart would never be the same again. For in Daniel, she had found a strength that rivaled her own. The festival, meant to celebrate unity, had instead shown the power of hidden courage. And the queen, stunned and awed, realized the human she married was not just her consort. He was the force that could stand beside her, and perhaps even save her world. The sun rose over the palace of Valdora, casting golden light across the silver towers and crystal walls. The city below was calm now, but the events of the Festival of Stars had left deep marks. Broken weapons, hastily repaired doors, and whispers of fear reminded everyone that danger could strike even in the heart of the empire. For Daniel, the day began quietly. He moved through the palace corridors, checking on the guards, inspecting the areas of the previous battle, and ensuring that no hidden threats remained. The palace was large, filled with corridors, secret chambers, and towers. To an ordinary visitor, it would seem endless, but Daniel knew its every corner now. He had studied it not for curiosity, but for survival. Serafina watched him from her chambers. She had been awake for hours, reflecting on the events of the night before. The queen, feared and respected by all, had never felt such a mixture of admiration and surprise. This human, chosen by the stars as her consort, had shown strength, skill, and courage that rivaled even her own. Word of the battle spread quickly throughout the city. Citizens whispered in awe, praising the human consort who had saved the queen. Nobles who had once mocked Daniel now bowed with respect when he passed. Even the palace guards, hardened warriors who had faced countless battles, could not hide their astonishment. He is remarkable, one said quietly to another. Stronger than any of our champions, another added. But Daniel ignored the praise. His focus remained on the palace and the queen. He knew the threat from Lord Kalen was not over. Kalen had been ambitious, power-hungry, and reckless, but he was clever. There was no telling what schemes he might attempt next. The queen finally descended from her chambers to meet Daniel. She wore her black armor, polished and gleaming, though her expression was softer than usual. For the first time in years, she approached someone without the weight of suspicion in her eyes. You stayed vigilant, she said. Even after the battle ended, Daniel nodded. The palace is still vulnerable. The first attack is never the last. Her lips curved into a small, almost shy smile. You are unlike anyone I have ever known. Daniel looked at her calmly. I am just a man, but I have learned that preparation, patience, and observation are as important as strength. The queen studied him for a moment, then let out a quiet breath. You saved me, and in doing so you have changed everything. The palace council convened again, this time in a quieter, more controlled setting. Nobles who had conspired against the queen were carefully watched, while Daniel observed with calm eyes. He noticed subtle signs, furtive glances, hands twitching toward hidden weapons, hushed whispers. His experience and observation had prepared him for this moment. He approached Serafina quietly during the council. They are still testing you, he whispered. Watch carefully. Your enemies hide in plain sight. The queen's eyes narrowed. Then I will rely on you. Daniel's expression remained calm. We will rely on each other. It was not a declaration of romance. It was a promise of partnership. Days passed and the palace began to recover. Repairs were made, guards were strengthened, and the nobles were reminded that betrayal carried consequences. Daniel moved quietly among them. his calm demeanor hiding the sharp mind that watched and calculated every risk. Serafina observed him closely. She saw how he treated the servants with respect, how he listened carefully to each guard, and how he acted decisively when danger appeared. Unlike many of her warriors, who relied on brute strength and intimidation, Daniel relied on intelligence, patience, and precision. The queen realized something extraordinary. The stars had not chosen him at random. Daniel's strength, hidden, quiet, and precise, was exactly what Valdora needed, not only to protect her, but to protect the Empire itself. One evening, as the twin moons rose high in the sky, Serafina led Daniel to the balcony overlooking the city. The streets were quiet, the lanterns casting soft light on the silver towers below. "You have changed everything," she said softly. Daniel remained silent, looking out at the city. "I did what I had to," he replied. "I am not a warrior like your champions, but I will stand where I am needed. Always." Her gaze softened. "You are more than I imagined. You surprised me." He turned to her, calm and steady. "I did not want to surprise you. I wanted to protect you." For the first time, Serafina felt the weight of her own vulnerability. She had ruled for decades, feared and respected by all. Yet in this moment she realized that Daniel, the human she had married without choice, was now her equal in strength, courage, and wisdom. Word of Daniel's deeds reached the neighboring star systems. Messages were sent to distant rulers and commanders, spreading tales of the human who had defended the Queen of Valdora. Some doubted the reports at first. How could a human, considered weak by many, stand against trained alien warriors and survive? But when records were confirmed, respect for Daniel grew across the galaxy. He became a symbol, not only of courage but of the hidden strength that humans possessed. The stories told of him as a silent force, a protector who appeared when needed and acted with precision and care. Even Serafina's advisors could no longer deny the truth. Back in the palace, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Daniel took on responsibilities he had never imagined, training some of the palace guards in tactics, helping to plan defenses, and advising on security measures. He never sought glory, never demanded recognition, but his influence grew steadily. Serafina began to consult him more frequently, asking for his perspective not only on security, but on the Empire itself. His advice was simple, clear, and effective. He did not rely on intimidation or fear. He relied on logic, observation, and careful planning. The Queen admired him, not only for his strength, but for his intelligence and patience. She had underestimated humans before, assuming weakness where there was resilience. Daniel had proven her wrong. The next threat from Lord Kalen never materialized openly, but Daniel's preparations ensured that the palace remained safe. He had anticipated the plan, set traps, and trained the guards to respond. When Kalen attempted subtle moves of sabotage or whispers of rebellion, he found no opportunity to strike. It became clear that the human consort was not only a protector, but a stabilizing force in the Empire. The court, which had once doubted him, now relied on his judgment. The Queen herself began to see him as indispensable, not only to her, but to Valdora. One night after the city had quieted, Serafina led Daniel to the training yard. The night air was cool and the stars shimmered above. "You have changed my view of strength," she said quietly. "I believed it was power alone, but you have shown me that courage, patience, and intelligence are just as important." Daniel looked at her calmly. "Strength comes in many forms. Some show it with swords, some with words, some with actions hidden until the moment they are needed." Her eyes softened and she allowed herself a small, rare smile. "You are remarkable. The stars were wise to choose you." He nodded simply. "I only wish to serve where I am needed, and that is beside you." Over the following weeks, Daniel continued to integrate fully into the palace. He trained with the warriors, studied the Empire's politics, and earned the respect of every guard and noble. Serafina observed him closely, growing more confident in her choice, whether by law or by fate. Together, they began to plan for the future, not just the security of the palace, but the stability of the Empire. Daniel's wisdom and strength complemented the Queen's power and experience perfectly. The court slowly accepted the human as more than a consort. He was now a partner in the truest sense, a guardian, a strategist, and a symbol of hope. Finally, one evening as the palace glowed under the twin moons, the queen spoke quietly to Daniel on the balcony. "You have changed everything, human. Not just for me, but for Valdora itself." Daniel looked out at the city below, his expression calm but resolute. "I did what I could. I will continue to do so for you, and for the people." She studied him for a long moment, the weight of the event settling in her mind. She had thought she married a weak human, chosen by law, a creature of little strength. But the truth was clear. Daniel had revealed himself to be a man of courage, wisdom, and skill beyond imagination. He was not only her partner, but her equal, perhaps even her greater strength. The queen realized, finally, that the stars had chosen perfectly, and for the first time, Valdora's queen felt truly secure, not just in her throne, but in her choice. The human she had married was not only her consort. He was her shield, her equal, and the hope of a new era. Together they would face whatever came next. A new beginning had begun,